Good morning. Hi, I'm CEO of Modus Robotics, Dan Hubert, and I want to do a quick video introduction here on LinkedIn to talk a little bit about what I'm about and why I'm here in the first place. So indulge me with a quick story, and then I'll have other videos later on that talk about how Modus Robotics actually works, what are our offerings, and what is it that we actually do. So with that said, my introduction into robotics in the drone space really started back in, I think it was 2008. I had just come back from a flying tour in the Navy overseas right after 9/11. I went through Top Gun school, and then I was standing up a weapons school, and my career really was on track. I mean, I had done everything that I had wanted to do. I was training studs, going out, shooting missiles, dropping torpedoes, doing air-to-air, helicopter to fixed-wing engagements, some really risky stuff. Getting them ready for combat, and that's really what I wanted to be doing at that time. And then my life kind of changed really quickly for me. I was in Little Italy, if you're familiar with San Diego, and I was on a Sunday morning, and I was coming across the street with an espresso in one hand and a cannoli in the other hand, just thinking life was great. And I went blind in the middle of the street and ended up climbing out of the street to get out of traffic. And that was the end of my, or at least what I thought was going to be the end of my flying career. For most people, that's not a big deal, but for a pilot and for a military officer, that his career lifestyle really depends on his ability to fly and to perform. That's a pretty big deal. So I transferred. I became a project manager, overseeing the new helicopters we had coming in. So the MH-60 Romeo series, which is an all digital cockpit, but also had a full network suite that we had to figure out. And in there, I got my waiver to fly again. I was like, great. Well, my career is off track. So I was asked to do something unusual, and so I was asked to go to Special Forces. For the Army of all things, and oversee their medium-range extended drone program, which really constituted me operating a site in the middle of Iraq, reporting to Qatar, and then overseeing 12 individual sites. So I'm going to share a little bit about why that's important, because it really has shaped what my company is today. And so imagine bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, 40-something officer coming in, used to flying very, very expensive pieces of equipment, and arrives in Iraq, checks in with the local infrastructure there. And mind you, before I showed up, I had no briefing on what these systems were. So as a pilot, the first thing you do is you open up the operator manual and go, okay, how do I operate this? What's my emergency procedures? What's my risk profile? And I got a very quick rude awakening, because it was about 10 o'clock at night, and I had my feet kicked up on the desk, and out of the control shack, which was part of my office, out comes this young kid, and he goes, hey, there's nobody here, and I have an engine out. And I'm kicked back, and I kind of put the book down a little bit and said, well, just do your engine in-flight restart procedures. Because we don't have those. It starts with a huffer, which is a air-blowing device that gets an engine moving. I went, oh, well, that's not good. Well, where are you? He said, oh, we're over downtown Baghdad. So, the book goes down. Instantly, I get very, very interested. And I walk into the cockpit. And we'll just flash forward. I basically had to produce or pull from my collective knowledge an emergency procedure to ditch the aircraft safely. And long story short, we got it gliding out of the city, and we landed it safely next to the Tigris River. And then the next question I had to ask was, okay, well, how do we recover this? What's our safety profile here, and what do we do to recover and learn from this? And they didn't have anything. And so very quickly, I made some phone calls to my hierarchy, and ended up doing something that I didn't think I was ever going to do, which was to put on Kevlar, grab a M4, a satellite radio, and jump into the back of a helicopter, a squad of 2 to go get it. Instantly I came back, we landed that, I called my boss, and I shut the site down for 2 weeks. We still supported troops in combat, but all the other things that we would normally do, we stopped instantly. And that was to establish a good, strong safety culture. So let me tell you what the benefit of that was. First, we realized very quickly, way back in 2008, 2009, that drones, even though we had pilots actually operating them, and they're considered what they call a visual rules aircraft, but they actually operate under instrument type conditions, which means you can't see and avoid. And anybody that's in the industry now understands the sense and avoid terminology that came out of that. But along with that, came risk profiles and establishing safety, a safety culture where it's okay to take a risk. If you're going to take a risk or you're going to go do something, then understand how to identify what those are ahead of time, find out ways to avoid them from happening in the first place, and if they do happen, have a plan to mitigate and reduce that severity that may happen. Along with that, we also did a bunch of training, and the big thing with all this was that in that short amount of time, they were losing a aircraft collectively about once a week. So that was about $100,000 that they were losing. In the time that I took over, we didn't lose a single one. We had a couple things on the ground that may have happened, but we didn't lose a single aircraft. And that came down to this risk profile and really understanding what these things were and how to operate them professionally. The next thing that came out of that was, what I didn't mention is before I flew, I worked in naval intelligence. And with that, understanding how your information flows, where is it important and when is it the most precious and needs to make a decision. And through that situation, so yes, we were supporting troops in contact. We were actually watching some very dangerous people, but we're also seeing a whole bunch of other things. And my background, in satellite photo interpretation started to go, well, hey, look, I can see infrastructure. I can see farms. I can see changes in pattern of life, along with search and rescue and a multitude of other things. And what happened out of that was, yes, we were very effective in writing those techniques, tactics, and procedures to get information to decision makers quicker in the operational part. But we're also able to write and work on data management to get it to, let's say, provisional reconstruction teams, town leaders, construction battalions, farm and ag. And this was very instrumental in helping the Iraqi people get the right infrastructure or the right help when they needed it. So if we saw a road washout, we knew who to pick up the phone with, send that picture to them, or an actual full-on report, and get them support within 48 hours. So that is what drives us. What happened after that was, I realized when I came back to the U.S. that, even though I had written papers for the FAA and stuff like that based on what I had learned, that, the U.S. was not going to be ready for quite some time. So I went back to flying, yay, and became a safety officer, department head, for a squadron on a carrier, and did strike group planning for a short time, and then did some theater level joint planning. And then I was suggested that I go to General Atomics as program manager on the Reaper program. Pretty shortly after that, I started to realize that the market for me was going to be, because my calling really is to bring this technology into the commercial market, was to go to the small UAS market. And I was talked to, or I was asked to consult for a variety of different projects, cell tower, a little bit of ag, a little bit of environmental. I did a little bit of quick work on power utility grid, but mostly in just trying to establish why you'd use these and what would be the cost savings of it. And I think the hurdle that we saw in the last 2 years was that everybody thought these were toys, not really understanding the fullness of the architecture. And so when you're dealing with Modus Robotics, yeah, we're going to fly drones, or we're going to help you fly drones and establish those safe, correct procedures in a program, or work with your procurement officer. But we're also going to look at the data analysis of this how is it processed, how is it managed, and how do you get the right decision when it's done. So consequently, over the last 6 to 9 months, we've seen a steady climb in our beyond line of sight and in our consulting service. We're doing things in South America, we're doing things in India, some really exciting things, and so that's Modus Robotics, and that's why we're here today. And I hope this gives you some more light about what I'm about. And in the next video, we'll talk about how to actually work with us and what is our service offerings that we have today. All right, I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks. Take care.